This example is similar to the one that I just finished, but just giving you another look basically at having to use the FOIL method. You do need to get your radical by itself first here, which means you would need to add the x on the other side. So you would have the square root of x plus 7 equal to 1 plus x. Now if you want to turn that around and make it x plus 1, that's perfectly okay. Alright, so now that I have the radical by itself, now I'm ready to square both sides. So when I square the square root, I'm left with what's underneath. Here we need to write this down twice, because again we've got to use the FOIL method. So I would have 1 plus x plus x plus x squared. And just like a while ago, what I'm left with at this point is a quadratic equation because I got the second power. So that tells me that I do need to set my equation equal to 0. So I need to subtract the x and I need to subtract the 7. Alright, so combining in the like terms, I'm going to go ahead and write down my x squared first, because when you go to factor, you're going to want it in descending order. So 1x plus 1x minus 1x would just leave you with 1x, and of course 1 minus 7 is negative 6. And this will factor. You're going to need to use 3 times 2 this time with for the negative 6. But in order to get your positive 1 in the middle, you'll need a plus 3 and a minus 2. So we'll have x is equal to negative 3 and x is equal to positive 2. And again, we've got to check these. So let's say I'll just check this real quickly here in my head. So if I substitute in the negative 3, of course I've got to substitute the negative 3 in here and here. And the negative 3 actually is not going to check. Okay, so this would, you would need to X that out in that case. Alright, then if you substitute in the positive 2, the positive 2 is going to end up checking. Now, it's very possible that they will both check, so just because my 2 examples had one that checks and one that doesn't mean it happens that way every time, okay? They both can check, and it's possible that neither one of them checks. Next example. This one looks different in the fact, that you've got 2 radical signs, but it's going to turn out where this is going to be a real simple one to solve. Just as we stated, or I stated in the beginning, I said you need to have your radical on one side by itself. Well, if you have more than one radical sign, you need to just get one of them by itself. It doesn't matter which one, but I think the simplest here would be, just since this radical is being subtracted, just to add it to the other side. So I would have the square root of 3x plus 2 is equal to the square root of 2x plus 7. Okay, so actually you end up with both of them by itself, but the goal was in the beginning just to isolate one of them. Okay, again, they're both square roots, so that means we're ready to square both sides. But in both cases, I'm just simply left with what's underneath the radical, because again, you square a square root, you're left with what's underneath, and same thing happens on this side. So this time, you're actually left with just a linear equation. Like, this is not even quadratic this time because my x's are to the first power. So you just need to get your x's on one side and get your numbers on the other side. So in this case, I would have x is equal to 5. Okay, now let's check that and make sure that that does check. Now on this one, let me write this down here on this go around. Okay, so I would have the square root of 3 times 5 plus 2 minus the square root of 2 times 5 plus 7. So this is going to give me 15 plus 2, so that's square root 17. And you can't take the square root of 17 and get a nice little whole number like what's happened on those other problems when you were checking those, but that's okay. Because now here, of course, this would be 10 plus 7, so that also gives us square root 17. So even though this doesn't work out to be a nice whole number, when you check it, square root 17 minus square root 17 is going to give you 0, which is, what the other side of our equation was equal to. So the 5 does check here as well.